Hi, everyone, and welcome to AAA's Facebook Live event dealing with teen driver safety. Summer is here, but unfortunately, that means so are the 100 deadliest days of the year. Over the summer, that is historically the point when there are more teen crash fatalities than any other time of year. So, why is that? Well, it's because teens aren't in school. They're out on the roads. They're driving more during the summer. So they're at more risk than they normally would be. So here we are offering you some tips for parents of teen drivers to help you keep them safe over those 100 deadliest days of the summer. Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Van Tassel, AAA's driver training programs.
And I'm Rich Chittister, lead instructor for AAA's driver training programs. And again, we're here to talk to you about keeping your teens safe during this very critical time in their driving. Bill, we know that these next few months are extremely dangerous. So what types of tips and for rules can we give our parents?
Well, rules is a good place to start. And families should have rules about their teens' driving privileges. And those can specify when the teen and under what conditions the teens are allowed to drive. So you as a parent should be in control of the keys so that the teen would come to you and ask permission to drive for every trip. That way you know where and when and why and who else is going to be involved. So you're deeply involved at that point. And to help this, families often find adopting a parent-teen driving agreement can be useful.
So I have a 16-year-old, soon to be 17-year-old son. Yep, and we did the parent-teen driving agreement. He did not necessarily like some of the things I put in there. A lot of them have to deal with his grades and his behavior, keeping his room clean. And if you have a teenager, you know what a challenge that is. What are some other things they can do with a parent-teen driving agreement to help reduce that risk?
You can get your free parent-teen driving agreement at teendriving.aaa.com. And these agreements generally will start with some sort of qualifications about driving, so requirements. For example, one might be that the teen should complete a quality driver education program, and those have been shown to reduce crashes and citations. The latest research tells us that. Also, the parent-teen driving agreement will provide some details regarding the consequences if the teen doesn't follow the rules, like loss of driving privileges. It generally lists some things that teens must do, like wearing the safety belt and stay at or below the speed limit, and then list some things, or include some things that the teens must not do. So don't drive impaired and no teen passengers.
And that's actually a great point. My son be getting his license soon, probably towards the end of summer, and his friends are already asking, can we get to the beach? And what are the risks really of having passengers in the car, other passengers in the car?
Well, having teen passengers in the car is actually very dangerous for teen drivers. Our research arm, the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, looked into this, and they looked at crash risk, fatal crash risk, depending on how many teen passengers were in the car. You might be surprised at what we found. Just adding a single teen passenger increases the risk of a fatal crash by 44%. Having two teens, that doubles, 100% more likely your teen would be involved in a fatal crash. 3 or more teens aboard, that's 4 times more likely that your teen's going to be in a fatal crash. So teens and teen drivers, teen passengers, they don't mix. It's not a good idea. So any passenger under age 21 need to be out of the car. And parents can learn more about these and other risks in AAA's online Start Smart Parent session for parents of new teen drivers.
If you're just joining us, my name is Rich Chittister, and I'm the lead instructor for driver training at AAA. With me, I have Dr. Bill Van Tassel, and we're here trying to giving you information on keeping your teens safe during this trying summertime. My son is a YouTuber, gets a lot of information off YouTube. And Dad, I've seen all these videos on driving. There's a lot of myths out there, and I've had to go through a couple of them with him. Can you go through some for our parents out there?
Well, I think one of the issues that families are dealing with now is the myth that you can just get your license very simply nowadays. It's harder, and it should be, for teens to get their license nowadays, because there's a graduated driver's licensing process that teens have to go through now. When we got our license, we just got it. We had full privileges. Go. Not that way anymore. So the teens progress through stages. Generally, the first stage is a requirement that the teen cannot drive alone, and they have to have an adult, age 21, sober, in the passenger seat, acting as a coach or supervisor for the driver. And they'll go out and practice. And if the team does that well enough, they can move to the next section. And in the next stage, the team can drive solo, but there are some restrictions. And that would include things like no teen passengers. We already talked about that. No use of cell phones. Keep those distractions to a minimum. And some restrictions on night driving. And we know for any age driver, night driving is particularly risky. Here, the catch is that if a teen driver screws up in one of those stages, gets a citation or a crash, they got to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. So they're really earning that privilege over time under reduced risk conditions. Now, you got to keep in mind, parents, that you really need to know your state-specific graduated driver's license laws. Unfortunately, we can't rely on our teens to bring home all those details that we need, so you need to go dig those out yourself. But AAA is making that easy for you. You can find information on your state's GDL laws on teendriving.aaa.com.
So another thing that's come up, especially with my son, is, Dad, I turned 16, I have to get my permit. And we know there's some times where you want to extend that out. Maybe they're not mature enough. Any other information with that?
Well, when a teen starts learning to drive, oftentimes they'll, the state says I'm ready, so let's get started. And that can be a little tricky because they may not actually be ready. Right? So just because the state says they're old enough doesn't mean they're actually ready to start learning how to drive. You think about it, driving is the first true adult responsibility most teenagers have. So they do need to be responsible enough to take that on, if you will. And let's face it, that some teens, age 14, 15, 16, just probably aren't there yet. They're probably not ready to learn to drive. They haven't demonstrated the level of maturity that's required. So parents can make that decision. It's really up to the parents and need to understand how responsible they are. Are they doing well in school? Are they getting along well with others? Some other signs parents could use. Yeah, we can start this now. So it's really up for parents to decide. And the state says, yes, they can start to learn to drive. It's really up to you to decide, should they start learning to drive.
The nice thing about doing events like this is we get a lot of feedback from people who are actually watching what we're doing. And Tiffany on lines asked a question, what are some tips that parents can give their teens to stay safe on the road?
Well, it starts with being a good role model. And we have to keep in mind, parents, that your teen is not learning to drive starting at age 14, 15, 16. They have been learning to drive for about the last 10 years, watching you. Now, you might not want to hear that, but they already have your driving habits to some degree. So have you ever gone 5 over? Have you ever used your cell phone? Have you ever pushed through that yellow light? Your teens are watching you. But it's not too late. You can still be a good role model, and that's very important because it turns out parents are the most important factor that influence how teens drive than any other factor. So you can learn more about that in AAA's online Start Smart parent session for parents of new teen drivers.
And again, if you're just joining us, my name is Richard Chittister. I'm the lead instructor for driver training here at AAA. And with me, I have Dr. Bill Van Tassel, and we're giving you tips to keep your teens safe during these summer driving months. Though another question that has come up is giving your teen access to a vehicle. Should they have their own vehicle?
Well, to start, the answer is no. And research tells us that teens that have an exclusive access to a vehicle actually crash more than teens who are actually sharing a family vehicle. So for the first 3, 6, 12 months, whatever is right for the family, it's far better and safer for the teen to just simply drive a shared family vehicle. So just because teen gets a driver's license, that shouldn't automatically trigger the acquisition of another car. Give them time, let them earn those driving privileges.
Sure. And online, Mary is asking, what vehicle should I buy my teen?
Well, what they want and what is safe for them are two different things. And we've asked teens, we surveyed teens, what do you want? And we get fairly common answers. We want a sports car or a truck or an SUV. Well, there's some risk with all of those vehicles. Sports cars, tendency to drive too fast. When you're talking trucks and SUVs, They are a bit higher vehicles, so their center of gravity is a little bit higher, so they're actually more likely to tip over in a serious crash. Of course, we know that a rollover crash is one of the most serious ones. You want to avoid a rollover crash,
Sure.
For sure. So by far the better option to start teen drivers in is a normal medium-size four-door passenger sedan, four-cylinder front-wheel drive. That's going to be fine for most teen drivers.
And with the different types of vehicles, there's so much new technology that's out there. So one of the things that comes up is, will that technology actually make my teen safe?
Well, it won't make the teen safe, but the teen might be able to use it to stay safer. And that's an important distinction, because we already know that teens are overconfident as drivers. And if they start even over-relying more on technology, that problem can get worse. So the message, the habit that we as parents want to get across to our teens is it's better to drive these vehicles as if you don't have those technologies, and then let them back you up and activate only if you need them. So you're not relying on them to keep you safe. They're just a back pocket thing that they will help if you need it, but hopefully you never need it.
Sure.
In fact, if they activate, if one of those systems activates, you probably missed something. You may not have been paying as much attention as you should have been to driving. So the driver is still the most effective safety system in any car.
You talk about the driver, and we can talk about safety systems all day long, but unless that driver behind the wheel is awake and alert and ready to go, all the safety systems, they're not going to do you any good. So when we talk about how much sleep these teens, especially teens, should be getting, I know there's some new research that's come out. Would you care to elaborate a little bit on that?
A lot of people think they can get by with 7 hours of sleep or less, and maybe some adults, but generally we need more. For teens, it's a different story. They need a lot more sleep. And this fairly recent research tells us that teens biologically need between 9 and 9.5 hours of sleep every single night. It's actually critical to their brain's normal development, their physical development, and their long-term well-being. So if the teen's got to get up at 6 a.m. to go to school or to some sort of athletic event, they actually need to be asleep. Not in bed, but asleep by 9 p.m.
Wow. So Ellen online asks, how can my teen be safe when I'm not in the vehicle?
Well, being a good role model is key. So helping them see your driving habits, and hopefully they'll take those with them. And then there are various monitoring systems that could be installed in a car, but perhaps just as effective might be having an ongoing conversation with your teen after each drive.
Being involved, being engaged.
Touching base before each trip and after each trip. So stay engaged. They know you're watching, you're concerned as a parent, and that's going to help keep them safer. If they know you're watching, monitoring, then that can possibly affect their behavior. You might get some feedback from law enforcement about your teen driver. Hopefully not, but that can be some feedback. We're going to try and keep that to them.
I know when our daughter went off on her own, she was required to call when she reached her destination, or every 2 hours, whichever came first. And obviously the rule was you pull over and stop before you call us. But those were the rules, and she kept to them. And even to this day, she doesn't even live at home anymore, and she calls every day, just, hey, I'm home, just wanted to say hi. So it stuck with her through the years.
That's a good point, and a good policy to have within the family. And it turns out some of the latest research tells us that teens are using their cell phones, of course, while they're driving, unfortunately. But in many cases, it's the parents that are texting them or calling them with an expectation that the teen will get back with them within 1 minute or 5 minutes. So that's a lesson for the parents out there. Yes, you should stay in contact and make sure that when the trip is done, they reach their destination, have a little contact. That's great. But don't text them while you know they're driving. Don't expect a response. We don't want parents to make the problem worse.
My wife would always say, I don't want to call her because I don't want to be that last text. But we know that comes up.
Yeah, that's driving.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining AAA's Facebook Live event, 100 Deadliest Days. Hopefully, the tips we shared with you, you can use, take home, and keep your team safe behind the wheel during these risky months. Please take the Start Smart online parent program for parents of new teen drivers.
And there's more information at teendriving.aaa.com.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
See you next time.